Trying to get Social Security disability for PTSD can feel like you've been handed a map to a city that doesn't exist. It's confusing, it's frustrating, and it is so easy to feel completely lost. But what if we could build a clear roadmap together? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do.
So here's the million-dollar question, right? How does the Social Security Administration, the SSA, actually look at a PTSD claim? Because it's not enough to just have a diagnosis. You have to prove your case using their very specific, very official rulebook. And in this explainer, we're going to walk through that rulebook step by step.
Yep, we are going to build your roadmap. We're going to take all of that dense government language and translate it into a clear path so you can see exactly what they're looking for and how all these different pieces are supposed to fit together.
All right, so where do we even begin? Well, every journey has a starting point, and for a PTSD disability claim, it starts with one specific regulation. You can think of this as the constitution for your entire case.
It's called Listing 12.15. You have to know this one. Every single PTSD claim in the country is measured against this exact standard. If you want to understand how the SSA is going to decide your case, you have to understand this listing. It is, without a doubt, the foundation of the whole process.
So what's the formula here? It's actually a pretty simple two-step process. First, everybody, and I mean everybody, has to get through the gateway of paragraph A. That part's non-negotiable. Then you get to a fork in the road. You only have to satisfy the rules for either paragraph B or paragraph C. So let's break down what's behind each of those doors.
Okay, so let's start with that mandatory first step, paragraph A. This is all about the medical proof of your diagnosis. I want you to think of this as the concrete foundation of your entire claim. If it's not solid, nothing else matters. Now, paragraph A says your medical records have to show evidence for all 5 of these things. It's not a pick-and-choose menu. You need proof of exposure to the trauma, you need proof you're re-experiencing it, that you avoid reminders, that you have disturbances in your mood, and finally that you have that hyper-arousal, that feeling of being constantly on edge. The SSA is looking for all 5.
Okay, so let's say your evidence checks all those boxes for paragraph A. You're through the first gate. Now you're at that fork in the road I mentioned. You only need to go down one of these 2 paths, B or C, and they are 2 very different ways to prove just how severe your condition is.
This slide really lays out the difference perfectly. Path B is all about the here and now. It looks at how your symptoms are severely limiting your ability to actually function, day in and day out. Path C, on the other hand, is about the long game. It's for people with a documented, long-term history of a serious disorder who, even with treatment, just can't adapt to new demands. So, if you're going down Path B, the SSA is going to look at you through 4 different lenses. They're asking questions like, how well can you understand and remember instructions? How do you handle being around coworkers or a boss? Can you stay on task and get your work done on time? And how well can you manage your own emotions and day-to-day personal care?
And here's the kicker. The bar is set incredibly high. It's not enough to just have a little trouble. The SSA requires proof of an extreme limitation in one of those areas, or marked, which is still incredibly severe, limitations in 2 of them. And listen, those aren't just adjectives. They are specific legal terms with very high standards of proof.
Now, what about that other path, Path C? Well, the first thing you need to know is that it has a time requirement. This path is only an option if you have at least a 2-year documented history of PTSD. The SSA wants to see a long-established medical record.
And here is the other critical piece of Path C, this concept of marginal adjustment. It sounds a little jargony, but here's what it really means. It means that even with all your medical treatment, you have a very fragile stability. You have minimal capacity to adapt to change. A new task at work, a different schedule, anything outside your routine could cause you to fall apart.
Okay, so once you've proven your medical case under Listing 12.15, the SSA asks a whole new question. Okay, but is there any work you can do? And this right here is where the roadmap just took a massive turn. Because in early 2025, the rules for how they answer that question changed a lot. This is a huge deal. As you can see, we are in a completely new era. The old rules, SSR 004P, they're history. The new rules, SSR 24.3P, are the law of the land now, and they put a much, much bigger emphasis on the realities of a modern workplace and the real-world limitations that come with conditions like PTSD.
So what does this actually mean for you at your hearing? Well, first, the vocational expert, the VE, can't just rattle off a list of jobs anymore. They have to actually explain their data. Second, there is a huge new focus on the mental and social demands of work, which, let's be honest, are often the biggest hurdles for someone with PTSD. And third, it's now expected that your representative will challenge the VE if their testimony doesn't line up with these new, tougher rules.
So knowing the rules is half the battle, but proving your case with the right evidence, that is everything. Let's dig into what the decision makers are really looking for right now when they build the strongest possible claims. I want you to picture your evidence like a pyramid. At the very top, the thing they value most are your longitudinal medical records, the story of your condition told over years. Right below that, you've got objective evidence like mental status exams. And at the base of the pyramid, while a high VA rating is definitely helpful as supportive evidence, you have to remember, the SSA always makes its own decision based on its own rules.
And hey, here's the pro tip, something you'll really need to watch out for. The SSA is finally cracking down on what we call ghost jobs, these old, outdated job titles that don't really exist in the real world anymore. If a vocational expert at your hearing starts listing jobs like document preparer, that is a major red flag under the new rules, and it absolutely should be challenged.
Phew, I know that was a lot. So let's just boil it all down. This slide right here, this is your entire medical roadmap at a glance. You have to have everything in paragraph A. Then you need to meet that super high bar for limitations in paragraph B, or you need to show that long-term history and marginal adjustment from paragraph C. That's the core logic.
And that brings us to the final and maybe the most important question for you in your case. It's not about having a mountain of paperwork. It's about making sure all that paperwork tells a complete, coherent story that follows one of these paths. Does your roadmap lead to an A+B approval or an A+C approval? Answering that question, well, that's the key to turning all this confusion into clarity.